Okay, so this is uh, basically Aristotelian argument. We'll go a little bit more in depth at this later in the semester, but these are the main components of Aristotelian argument: logos, ethos, and pathos. So this is a little in contrast to the Ptolemene model we've already looked at, but it also kind of works in conjunction with it. You want to keep both models in mind as you're arguing. All right, so what we have to ask is what exactly is logic? So logic is studying of establishing relationship between ideas and between facts and statistics and studies, etc. And this is what you want most of your argument to be. You want it to be logical. You want it to make sense to the audience, and you want it to make it feel as if it's supported. So all of this is tied to what's called ethos, pathos, and logos of Aristotle. So your logos, or the logic part, is that the audience needs to be convinced of the authority of you, the writer. All right, so that's your logos, is how do you establish this? And we will go into this in more detail, like I said, as we go further in this semester. You also want them to be sympathetic to your argument. You want them to be willing to listen to the argument. You want them to be willing to listen to the support, and you want them to be willing to accept all of that. And then you also want them to understand and accept the logic of your argument. All right, so be aware of all that. And that all goes to your low. Now, your ethos is your authoritative voice. And the way you do that is you draw on authorities that are well established, that are objective, that both sides of your audience. So what I mean by that is those who believe and don't believe what you're claiming will accept these authorities. And in fact, if let's say you're arguing about climate change and you're arguing to people who don't believe it is actually created by humans, if you can find someone who will support your side that it is created by humans, that is also well respected by that part of your audience that doesn't believe, then you've got a better chance of convincing them to listen to your side of the audience. So it's not just drawing on good authorities. You try to draw on authorities that are respected by those whose minds you're trying to change. And then you also can draw on your own experiences and knowledge. However, when you do that, you again need to make sure that you're writing with an objective tone. You're not using incendiary language. You're using language that is unbiased and objective, that just lays out the facts. And that's your ethos. Now, with your pathos, this is the emotional component. It should never be the primary means of your argument. When it is your primary means of the argument, of supporting your argument, that turns into propaganda. So what you'll see, especially as we're going into a presidential election season, is both the Democrats and the Republicans will be using pathos. The most ads you see will be based on fear most of the times, and other emotional triggers that get people to react emotionally to an argument instead of reacting in a logical, cerebral sort of way. So what you have to be careful of here is the most dangerous of the three, but you do need to ask what emotions can be appealed to. Uh, Fear is not always a good one. That really makes for a bad argument. But you can say that, if climate change isn't addressed, this and this may happen, right? Or is going to happen, or is happening. which isn't so much an appeal to fear, but you're appealing to people not wanting something like that to happen. You need to work with it in conjunction with your logic, however. You can't, like I said, you just can't have an argument based on ethos. Uh, you've got to join that to the logic, and your logic should be a much more a larger part of the actual argument. And again, as I already said, if you peel an argument entirely to emotion, to pathos, that's just propaganda. And unfortunately, propaganda works. However, it only works for a short time, but it can. I mean, most conspiracy theories, I tend to feel, work off of ethos, and they tend to work for a good time. But a lot of times, then you're working with audiences that don't have critical thinking skills, and therefore they're much more easily manipulated by their emotions because they haven't developed the capacity to logically think through these conspiracy theories. Anyway, uh, that's it for just a real short summary of these three qualities of argument. As I said, we'll get into Aristotelian argument later in the semester, and we'll go a little bit more in depth, or at least give more examples.